What's up, vapors? Thanks for checking out Daily Vape TV. My name is Nick, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Rig Pig. So after months of anticipation, the Rig Pig is finally here. I gotta tell you, I've been following the story for about 6 months or so since Vape decided to tease us with a few pictures on their Instagram page. Ever since then, I've been dreaming of holding this thing in my hands because it is a thing of beauty. I picked this up at Vapor Slam, New York, and I did purchase this for myself. So before we get started here, I gotta tell you that I did purchase this with my own money for the purpose of doing this video review. However, my opinions on it will remain honest and unbiased. With that being said, I would like to shout out Corey from RigMod for, just helping me out with this thing, just kind of going through it all. You might have watched my Vapor Slam coverage, and in that we did a little bit of an interview. So I got to pick his brain a little bit about where this design came from and where they're going with it. So definitely an awesome device. If you want to purchase one of these for yourself, you can do so on Vapeamp's website. Right now it's going for $240 for the Pig by itself. If you want to pick it up with the Roughneck V2 combo, then you can get that for $330, or the Roughneck itself for $110 for the standard stainless brass and copper, or $120 for any of the Cerakote versions. So before we go down to the close-up view, I'd like to give you a little bit of background information and some specs on these devices here. So first of all, the Rig Pig itself is a Delrin core with brass upper and lower sections and all copper contacts. It is exclusively Roughneck V2 threaded, which is why I'm kind of encompassing these two as a pair for this review video. With that being said, the Roughneck itself is a simple 3-piece atomizer. It has adjustable airflow at the top here, a wide bore drip tip, a copper center post, and it is exclusively threaded for the rig mods. Also, I just wanted to tell you guys that this thing weighs about 2 pounds, and it definitely feels like a nice weighty piece. It feels like high quality. Honestly, that's all I really have to say for the intro portion here. Let's go down to the close-up view and take a better look at this thing. All right, vapors, as you can see right here, we have our Rig Pig all set up. Now, I'm just going to show you how to break it down, how to reassemble it, what the insides look like, and all that good stuff. Let me start off by saying that I did get the box with it. It's just your standard Vaping American Made Products packaging, a gray kind of cardboard box with a magnetic latch, nothing too fancy. Also, this is not the original tip that you get with the Roughneck V2. This is a double helix designs tip. Shout out to Jess Marie. She does some great work. Make sure you check her out. I'll put a link in the description for her as well. This right here, I just felt like kind of set the whole piece off, and I see a lot of people posting pictures with that tip on there, so that's kind of why I included that in this little video. Anyways, let's get started here. Let's just go ahead and remove our Roughneck V2. I really just want to kind of get into this and show you guys what you really want to see first, which is the Pig itself. So there you can see the first battery chamber. Now, just like any other series box mod, you want your batteries facing one up, one down like that. Always the negative end towards the switch. It goes down, positive flow, and then up to the atomizer there. So that's how you want to put in your batteries when it comes to the Pig, just like that there. Move those out of the way. Nice thick threads on there, very chunky but also smooth. Really no problems with the threads whatsoever. And there you can see the button. It just does kind of free spin like that, but I really don't, I'm not afraid of it kind of coming out or anything like that because it's definitely stuck in there really well. Rig engraving on one side into the Delrin, which is really nice. Very simple, classy engravings. And then the Rig Pig right there. So this thing is pretty shiny right now, but you could probably see a few fingerprints on it. I did polish it up earlier today, and already it's starting to lose its luster. But with that being said, let's move on to the bottom section here. You can see the serial number. Mine is 0435, and I did hear they make them in batches of 250. We have battery venting holes on this side here. We have our 2 screws that hold everything together, and we have our other little battery door thing. So first of all, let me just take that out, and I am using the rig key. You have to use the flat end here. I tried using it in these holes, but obviously it doesn't work. So you can use this little flat end here if you have a rig tool already. If not, you can use a quarter or your thumbnail or something like that. But this is a pretty rigid threading here, so you're going to have to turn this a bunch of times. And honestly, I kind of got tired of using my thumbnail after breaking it a few times. So yeah, just want to turn this probably a dozen times or so, it feels like. let's just speed this part up. So there you go. We have our battery door section here, or battery hole, whatever you want to call it. Not really much to show off there, just kind of like the threads and everything. But let's go ahead and remove these screws real quick and we'll show you the guts. So these are just standard Phillips head screws. You can use any old screwdriver that you got laying around, and they're only in there a couple of threads. There you go. So that's what holds the whole thing together, is these two screws. I'd say they're about 3 inches long. Now I can actually take off the bottom section, and if you saw that roll away there, that's actually a little chunk of Delrin. Oh, I lost another one. There it is. So these little Delrin insulator pieces here actually keep the screws insulated from the actual bottom plate for the batteries. And that right there, big copper chunk right there, is your connection. That's what's going to transfer the power from one end to the other. And there's your positive connector on one end, and it switches over to the threading on the cap, which allows the electricity to flow freely through to the other side. This comes out with a little tap and a little wiggle. This piece actually comes out. There you go. That's going to have to be polished up every, week or two, I'd say. But it's nice and thick and chunky, and definitely can handle whatever you can throw at it. And the bottom piece here is fully insulated with Delrin. There you go. Good look inside there. Now this top piece comes off as well. This middle section here is just a big old honking chunk of Delrin. Really nothing fancy about this whatsoever. The last little bit here is the top cap section. This is where the roughneck threads in, and you have your switch assembly here. Now this is kind of funky because you have to actually press in on the switch in order to get off the little button. So we're just gonna unscrew that. And I'm using the spanner wrench right now, but if you did not depress the button, then you can't use the spanner wrench. So it's a little bit finicky. Yes, you can use the rig tools, but really they're not as easy to use, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe it's just my little griping, but it feels like that's a little bit lazy to me. They just kind of took the switch from the Rig V2 and transferred it over to this thing at an angle, but it hits just as hard anyways. So there you go. There's the top cap section. I'm going to give you a little close-up of all the parts now. So there we go. Here's the top cap section once again. You can see where the screws thread into, your roughneck connection here with the threads on the inside, and your switch housing assembly piece here. There's where the switch rests. I don't know if you can see that, but that's slightly indented there. That's actually where the switch rests on the inside when it's not being pressed. Moving on to the bottom cap. Here's the bottom cap once again. Nice Delrin insulated there. There's your battery door and a big chunk of brass in the bottom. Serial number, screw housings. Your battery cap connection here. Nothing too fancy about that. This is probably going to get a little bit worn down because you're going to be digging in through that with the tool every time you got to change out your batteries. All right, guys, real quick, I'm going to show you how to reassemble your Rig Pig. So first of all, we start off with the bottom plate here. You can see where the battery goes. You want to line that up with the hole on the copper plate there. So that just slips right back in, like so. Next up, we have our two little Delrin screw insulators, which we're going to pop into those small holes there. Next, you want to put the body on, and it seems a little bit weird, but you want to have the larger hole facing the closed off section on the bottom plate here, like so, just like that. So that's how that's going to go. So put the Delrin piece back on like that. We're going to move that aside real quick while we assemble our switch. Now, just like any old rig switch, you have your bottom pin section. Your spring goes into the switch housing, and you want to depress that switch as you tighten on the actual pin. So just screw that on, get a few threads in, and then you can finish it off with a spanner wrench if you want. Like that. Now that that's on there real good, we're going to bring this back in. And we're going to put everything back together like so. Now, once you have everything put back together there, you're going to put your screws back in and tighten those down. So now that you have all that put back together, you're going to put your batteries in there. So negative towards the switch, like that. Then you can put your cap back on there. Last but not least, we can put our other battery in, positive up, then put your roughneck on. And there we go. There's a fully assembled Rig Pig and Roughneck combo. Real quick before we go back to the main screen and have a chat about this device, let's take a look at the Roughneck V2 atomizer. So here you can see the drip tip on top attached to the airflow section. Let's just remove that real quick. And there you go. Nice wide bore tip on that. Definitely one of the widest bores I've ever seen on a dripper. The cap comes out like so. This one is just a friction fit with a little bit of an O-ring right on the inside there. You guys can probably see that. And knurled on the outer edge there. Not a huge fan of that look, but you know what? I feel like a lot of people out there will. Then you have your airflow section here, which can be completely closed off down to nothing or opened up all the way. So you get a really nice wide airflow going on there. And a slight chamfer on the inner cap there on the inside of that chamber. We have our barrel section. This comes right off like so, and you have the nice Cyclops eye style airflow sections dual on both sides here. So there you go, 1 and 2 with your engravings. Not the deepest engravings, but they are really pretty. So hopefully, however many times I decide to polish them, they won't come off, but you know, I feel like it's almost inevitable. And then you have your hidden O-rings right on the inside there. And on the bottom you have a dual O-ring. Hopefully you guys can see that. There you go. Finally, you have your build deck, which is your standard 3-post with flathead screws. Really nothing too fancy about this build deck here. Taller center post than the outer two. I feel like that can kind of be an advantage as far as organizing your coils. I usually have my positive leads going over the top, so that's definitely how this one is designed to do it here, which is good for me. Anyone that builds underhand, though, is going to have to kind of relearn their technique. So, yeah, just food for thought there, I guess. And a nice deep juice well. I'd say that's about 6 or 7 millimeters deep. And you could definitely fit a lot of wicking material down and in there. Let's go ahead and take this off, take a look at the pin underneath. So there you go. That's why you want to use the Roughneck V2 on your Rig Pig. Right there, that's really the reason, which is the huge surface area on that connection there. You can see the large insulator around that pin, and that's going to give you conductivity, and this is going to make it hit super hard. So real quick, I just wanted to show you guys the comparison between a standard 510 dripper and the Roughneck V2, and that's really the reason why they designed the Rig Pig around the Roughneck V2, because right there you can see a big solid copper contact in comparison to the size of a standard 510 dripper. I mean, there's definitely a huge difference there. I feel like the Roughneck V2 is going to be able to handle all the voltage that you can throw at it, as opposed to the 510 connection, where I feel like you might get a little bit of heating up at the 510 because of the resistance right there. So that's really why they designed it around the Roughneck V2, and I definitely cannot blame them for that. I mean, you can just see, just from the surface area alone, why one would be better for this style device. Anyways, guys, that about does it for this section of the video. Let's go back to the main screen, have a quick vape on this thing, and we'll talk about it some more. Alright guys, welcome back. Now we're going to go over some of my personal thoughts on these devices here. First we'll start with the Rig Pig and we'll start with the pros. My first pro is going to be that it's sturdy, it's solid, and it's built to last. I think Corey put it best in our little interview at Vapor Slam. He said this device is built to outlast you. And I couldn't agree more with him in saying that this is a heavy, weighty piece of machinery that feels super solid. I mean, if I threw this at someone, you'd probably knock them out. But this is definitely a device that will last you forever. I mean, you could probably run it over with a truck and it's still gonna hit just fine. My second pro is that it hits like a stealth bomber dropping freight trains that are full of nuclear bombs. It's such a stealthy little, I would say it's like a sleeper kind of mod because you don't expect it to hit so well, but honestly, it's a slightly cooler vape. The way I have it set up right now, I have a 10 wrap, 24 gauge regular Kanthal A1 space dual coil build around a 3mm bit. And this thing is absolutely chucking. So as they say, the proof's in the pudding, and as you just saw, this thing puts out a ton of vapor. The way I have it built now, the batteries will last me about 8 hours, which is super impressive for a series unregulated box such as this here. My next pro is going to be the fact that it is absolutely gorgeous. This thing is beautiful. The way I have it shined up right now, I guarantee in direct sunlight you can probably blind someone with this thing. However, I probably won't be cleaning it as often, at least the outside. I definitely want to keep the contacts clean, but even if it dulls down a little bit, it looks really classy as well. I like the look of dull brass personally, but maybe that's just me. But this thing is absolutely flawless. It came to me with absolutely no scratches or nicks or anything like that. Corey actually told me that he rejects 30 to 40 from each batch in order to get the highest quality machining pieces out to people to get them in their hands, and I definitely respect that level of quality and customer service there. My final pro is that is way better than the Noisy Cricket. I know I don't want to mention the dirty NC word here, but yeah, this thing is just a Noisy Cricket destroyer. Really, I can picture this thing just absolutely crushing a Noisy Cricket just by the weight alone. And I feel like this definitely hits harder as well. I know. All you Noisy Cricket fans out there are going to complain about the price and all things like that. Honestly, it is expensive, which brings me to my next point. The cons for this device, it is expensive. Now, the way I rationalize this purchase is that it's still cheaper than buying 2 rig mods, because that's essentially what you're getting with this. You're essentially getting the power of 2 rig mods stacked on top of each other with stacked batteries. That's essentially what a series box mod is. So I said, well, I could buy 2 rig mods for this, or I could buy a Rig Pig and be much happier, and I'm happy. I gotta tell you guys, I am super happy with the idea of this purchase here, but to everyone else out there that might be considering a series box mod, this is going to be on the pricier side for you guys. Now, my next con is that the finish doesn't match the Roughneck V2. That is a major con for me because I like to be matchy-matchy, and this does not match whatsoever. The finish on the Roughneck V2, especially when it's patinaed down, is very much more of a dull kind of earthy patina, whereas the brass on the Rig Pig kind of dulls down to a really nice, classy looking patina. I left this thing to darken down for about a week or so after Vapor Slam, and there was definitely a noticeable difference. I actually had to polish the Roughneck V2 twice in the time that it took for the Pig to dull down, so that's definitely a con in my book. I really kind of wish they would come out with maybe a LE cap or something like that for the Roughneck V2 that would match the machining on the Rig Pig. But that's just my suggestion. Maybe they'll do it in the near future or something like that. My third con is that there's condensation buildup on the top cap here section of the Rig Pig. When I purge through the air holes here on the Roughneck, I tend to get a lot of condensation buildup on the whole top piece here, which I'm just not a big fan of. It kind of makes the patina look really ugly, and I tend to have to wipe it down every now and then, and sometimes it'll even get on my switch, which I'm definitely not a big fan of. I'm just hoping it doesn't get all the way down into the contact pins or anything like that. Hopefully it doesn't get down any further, but it's going to make you have to clean it a little bit more often. So my next con is going to be the fact that you have to clean it pretty much weekly. If you want to keep this thing in tip-top shape, you actually have to take the whole thing apart and build it back up and clean it on the regular. I tend to not clean the outside of my mods. I prefer just to have, you know, the contacts nice and polished up, so I can let this thing go for a few weeks, but after that it'll start getting to me and I'll have to polish it up all over again. I mean, I polished this thing up this morning and I can already see some of my oils from my hands are getting on there, and it's going to start patinaing down tomorrow. All right, guys, real quick, let's go over some pros and cons on this Roughneck V2 atomizer here. My first pro is going to be the fact that the threads are not only buttery smooth, but they're beefy as well. And what I mean by that is that when I put it on my Rig Pig or my Rig V2, it feels absolutely rock solid. It doesn't wiggle, it doesn't wobble. It feels like it was designed to go on that specific mod, which it was, so that's appropriate. My second pro is going to be you get a better connection out of a Roughneck atomizer than you do any 510 connection, since the fact that you get the big solid copper contact in the bottom of the Roughneck as compared to the traditional 510 threading. My third pro is going to be you get tons of airflow with this thing. The adjustable airflow opens wide open, and you definitely get a lot more airflow than the V1 Roughneck. And it definitely doesn't leave you wanting any more than that, that's for sure. I usually use it about a third of the way closed off. And my final pro is the hefty screws. The flathead screws on this thing are absolutely gorgeous. They're nice and heavy and chunky and thick. They feel a little bit better than the V1 Roughneck screws, and that's definitely a pro in my book. So moving on to some cons. First of all, it's a Rig exclusive threading. Unfortunately, you can't use this on any old device. It's somehow a pro and a con, because in the same aspect, I like being able to have something that fits exclusively for one or two, in this case, specific mods. I do own a couple of the Rig V1 combos with the Roughnecks, and I just feel like it's a classy setup top to bottom. It looks appropriate and it hits hard as well. So that's kind of both a pro and a con. I just kind of listed it under the cons because all you guys out there that don't own a Rig V2 or a Rig Pig, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use this Rig V1 unless you get the 510 adapter, which are available out there. So keep an eye out for those. I'll post a link if I can find where you can get those in the description below. My next con is going to be when using it with the Rig V2, juice can get inside the hybrid connection. Now, I've run into this issue before with my Rig V2. And unfortunately, that kind of worries me as far as the safety factor is concerned. Just juice tends to find its way, especially if you over drip like I do. If you over drip it, it's just going to pour out the side airflow hole, and it's going to get all inside that connection there, which is definitely not a good thing in my book. I really like the look of the V1 and V1 Rig and Roughneck combination, because I really feel like even if juice leaks out the side, it's not going to find its way down into that little crevice there, which I worry about that a lot more with the V2. My next con is the machining is so-so. Unfortunately, I really don't feel like there's a lot of, care that goes into these as far as when they put them out the door. You can definitely see a lot of machining marks, and some of them aren't so as nice as others. I've seen some V2s that are really nice. I've seen some that are so-so. I mean, I just wish that they kind of went over it again with a buffing wheel or something like that before they hit it with a laser engraver, which brings me to my next point here, which is the engravings are very shallow. And I know it's a minor kind of con, but you know what? That kind of bugs me because I really want to take this and buff it up, put it on a wet sander or put it on a buffing wheel and just kind of buff out those machining marks. But if I do that, I fear that I'm going to just completely get rid of those engravings, which I think the Rig Vape Amp engravings are very classy. It says American made on there, kind of, showing off the fact that you have an authentic product like this. Is kind of something I like to do, but unfortunately, if I put it on a buffer or polish it too many times, I feel like those engravings are going to be completely gone. So I really wish they would kind of just go over it again with their laser engraver, just run another pass on it or something like that, just to make them stand out a little bit more. And finally, it is expensive. This is not a cheap atomizer. It is $110 for the standard materials, which are stainless, brass, and copper, and $120 for anything with the Cerakoting on it. So it is definitely an expensive little atomizer, and for something that's exclusive to their mod, I really feel like it's almost kind of unfair in a way, because they want you to buy the set. They don't want you to use a rig with a Kennedy or something like that. They want you to use a rig with a Roughneck. Not only only that, I feel like it's not really as impressive as the V1. Although the V1 did have its flaws, I feel like it was kind of like the hardest hitting mod at the time. And I still own two V1 Rig and Roughneck combos, and I absolutely love them. However, the V2, I'm not so proud of, I guess. I guess that's the best way to put it. But with that being said, let's move on. I'm going to just blow a few more clouds here, and then I'll go on to explain whether or not I think it's worth it to purchase. Alright guys, my final topic for today is whether or not I feel like these products are worth purchasing. Now my thoughts on this are a little bit strange because if you already own a Roughneck V2 and you're looking for something a little bit nicer, a little bit higher end or harder hitting for this thing to go on, and you don't want to go out and buy yourself the 510 adapter, then absolutely pick up the Rig Pig. This thing is not only gorgeous, but it's solid and it's built to last and going to maintain its value for a very long time as long as you take decent care of it. With that being said, if I didn't already own a Roughneck V2, would it be worth purchasing? And my thought is probably not. Now, I didn't pay full retail price for it. I did get a show special at Vapor Slam New York, so at the $330 price range, I really don't feel like it's worth investing that kind of money in something that, you know, it's pretty to look at and it's really nice and hard hitting, and there's lots of pros to these devices, but it's just a lot of money to spend on a mod setup, and there's definitely cheaper options out there that hit just about as hard, maybe in the regulated category. But I kind of wanted to show this off to you guys and just kind of have something that's going to last me forever. And that's definitely this mod right here, the Rig Pig. Take from that what you will. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to leave comments in the box below of what you think of the Rig Pig or Roughneck V2 atomizer. Of course, I'd love to answer any questions that you guys might have about this thing. I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. Anyways, don't forget to check the advocacy links down there in the description. I have them down there for you so you can fight for your right to vape. Of course, check me out on all my different social medias. I have Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you follow me on there. Like my page on Facebook. Check out my Snapchat. And if you want to give me a couple of bucks on my Patreon, that would be awesome as well. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. And as always, vape on.